The mall was dead. Even the fluorescent lights hummed with an unnatural stillness, as if aware of its own emptiness. I pushed open the heavy glass doors and stepped inside, the click of my boots echoing down the endless polished hallways. The air smelled faintly of bleach and something older. Dust, decay, maybe fear itself. A mop bucket trembled slightly in the corner, though there was no draft. My stomach nodded. I'd been given the keys, a set of rules, and a warning: follow them. Never question them. I hadn't asked why. I didn't dare. As I started the nightly cleaning, a soft clatter came from the upper floor. Footsteps. But I was alone. I froze. The sound came again, heavier, deliberate, echoing down the stairwell. I shined my flashlight toward the escalators. A mannequin in the window display shifted its head just enough to catch my peripheral vision. My breath caught. It had been staring straight ahead when I arrived. A whisper drifted from the far end of the hall. I couldn't make out words, only a tone that made my blood run cold. "You shouldn't be here." The lights flickered, throwing the hall into momentary darkness. When they returned, the escalator that had been still all night was moving. Slowly, impossibly, in reverse. And standing at the top, where no one should have been, was a shadow. Tall. Still. Watching. I swallowed hard, my fingers tightening on the mop handle. Rule 1 flashed through my mind: don't go upstairs after 11 p.m. But it was already past 11. Something moved behind me. The mop felt heavier than it should have, dragging across the gleaming tiles like it had a mind of its own. Every step echoed. Every clink of the bucket against the floor sounded like it was bouncing off walls that stretched farther than they ought to. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, their cold hum filling the air like a constant heartbeat, slow and uneven. I told myself it was normal. The mall was big, empty, and old. Lights flickered in the parking lot. Elevators groaned. Mannequins stared. But those were things I should expect. Ordinary things. Right. The manager had handed me the keys like I was being entrusted with something sacred, or dangerous. "Follow the rules," he said, his voice low, almost hesitant. "Don't touch the mannequins. Don't go upstairs after 11. Don't." He stopped himself, shaking his head, his eyes darting toward the ceiling. "Just don't question anything." I didn't ask why. I pushed the janitorial cart down the main corridor. The stores were dark, their metal gates cold to the touch. The window displays seemed frozen mid-action. Mannequins in half-smiles, arms outstretched, faces blank and yet too knowing. I kept my flashlight sweeping in slow arcs, trying to convince myself that shadows were just shadows. But then a soft, deliberate shuffle came from one of the upper floors. A sound like a foot dragging across concrete. I froze. My heart slammed against my ribs. "Hello." My voice sounded tinny and small. No answer. I took a cautious step toward the stairwell. The sound stopped, replaced by the faintest whisper, barely audible. "Don't." I blinked. The lights flickered again. For a moment, the escalator in the center of the hall shimmered, then hummed as if awakening. My stomach clenched when I noticed one of the mannequins had turned. Not fully, but its head was tilted slightly, following my movement. I swallowed hard, my fingers gripping the mop handle. This was ridiculous. I was alone. It couldn't move on its own. I started my cleaning routine, vacuuming the wide expanse in the middle of the hall, mopping the food court tiles. The silence pressed in on me, thicker with every step. I passed the arcade, the lights inside flickering, the machines frozen mid-animation. For a second, I thought I saw someone standing by the prize counter. A tall shadow, but when I blinked, it was gone. The rules replayed in my mind. Don't question anything. Don't go upstairs after 11. Don't touch the mannequins. I didn't know why, and I didn't want to. I approached the elevators near the back of the mall. Normally they would be silent, doors closed, waiting for the next customer. But one slid open with a slow metallic creak. Empty. The air inside smelled faintly metallic, like rust or old blood. My flashlight beam swept across the elevator's interior and landed on nothing. Nothing but the worn carpet and the dim reflection of the ceiling lights. And yet I could feel it. watching me. I tried to laugh it off. "It's just a building," I muttered. My voice echoed back at me, hollow and mocking. Then came the clatter. Not footsteps. Something heavier. Something dragged along the floor behind the locked gates of the electronics store. I froze, my ears straining. The sound stopped as abruptly as it had started. "Who's there?" My voice shook despite my effort to keep it calm. Silence. Then, from the upper floor, a slow, deliberate thump. 1, 2, 3. A pattern. Waiting. Watching. I should have left. I should have gone back to the stairwell, the exit, anything. But something kept me rooted. A mixture of fear, curiosity, and obligation. The rules mattered. I had to follow them. But I also needed to understand. I took a step toward the escalator. The tiles beneath my feet seemed colder now, and a draft brushed my neck, though the doors were closed. My reflection in the polished floor shimmered strangely, not quite matching my movements. I stopped. My breath caught in my throat. The lights flickered once, twice, and a whisper, clearer this time, brushed past my ear. "You shouldn't be here." I spun around. Nothing. The hall stretched endlessly. Empty stores frozen like tombs. But the sense of being watched didn't fade. It grew heavier, pressing in from every corner, every shadow, every reflective surface. And then, from the far end of the hall, I heard it, a low scraping dragging along the tiles. Something moving toward me, slow, methodical. I swallowed hard. My fingers tightened around the mop handle. The escalator shivered again. I looked up. A figure, tall, shadowed, impossibly still, stood at the top. Its presence filled the stairwell like a stain, impossibly dark. My heart skipped a beat. I remembered the first rule, the one I had ignored. Don't go upstairs after 11. It was already past 11, and I had nowhere to run. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like a distant swarm, their hum wrapping around me as I pushed the mop across the second floor tiles. My eyes refused to leave the escalator where I had glimpsed that shadow, though by the time I looked again, it was gone. But the unease remained. Something in the mall shifted while I wasn't looking, something aware. I remembered the manager's warning. Don't question anything. I didn't. I told myself I was careful, obedient, following the rules, but with each corridor I crossed, I felt them bend and stretch, subtly, impossibly. The cleaning cart rattled against the tile as I approached the food court. Tables and chairs were stacked neatly, but a faint smear on one of the polished surfaces caught my eye. Red. Or rust. My stomach knotted. I bent down, shining the flashlight across the smear. It was only a smear of dust, or maybe a handprint pressed into grime. But something about it felt deliberate. Someone or something had been here before me. I shook it off. "It's just dust," I whispered to myself. But the sound of my own voice was hollow, bouncing off the walls like it was being mocked. From the far end of the hall came a faint scraping. Not steps, but dragging. I froze, breath catching. The lights flickered violently, and then the mall was plunged into a sudden dim shadow. My flashlight barely pierced the gloom. "Who's there?" My voice sounded small, even to me. No answer. Only a distant echo of something shifting. Metal scraping against tile. I crept toward the sound. My fingers gripped the handle of the mop like a weapon. Every instinct screamed to leave, but something else. Curiosity, stubbornness, a foolish need to know, kept me moving. The electronics store loomed ahead. Its metal gates were down, but one panel had been pried slightly open, creating a narrow slit. I peeked inside. Nothing. Rows of TVs reflected my flashlight beam, but none of them held movement. And yet, one screen flickered, static for a second, then a faint outline of a figure appeared, hunched, impossible, as if frozen mid-motion. I jumped back. The cart hit a chair, clattering loudly. My heart pounded. The figure vanished instantly. I leaned against a column, trying to calm myself. "I'm imagining it," I muttered. "It's a building. Empty. Nothing." But the air had grown heavier. Cold spots snaked along my arms and neck. The walls seemed to breathe imperceptibly, expanding and contracting. I felt watched. Every reflective surface caught a glimpse of movement that wasn't mine. I remembered another rule: don't touch the mannequins. I passed the store with mannequins arranged in a frozen tableau. One seemed different this time. The head had tilted slightly, almost imperceptibly. I blinked. It was back to its original position. My pulse spiked. Then came a whisper so faint I could have imagined it. "They're waiting." I spun, flashlight darting across the empty hall. No one. Only mannequins, stacked chairs, a cart abandoned somewhere down the corridor. I continued cleaning, sweeping the hall methodically, but the mall no longer felt empty. Each step echoed like a countdown. Each corner held a shadow that stretched too long. I reached the central atrium, where the escalators led both up and down. I hesitated. The upper floor was technically off-limits after 11. My watch said 11:07. Something tugged at the corner of my mind. A need to check. To see. Against my better judgment, I moved toward the escalator. The handrail was icy. My reflection in the polished steel seemed wrong. Slender, elongated, as if the mall itself had warped me. I looked up. At the top of the escalator a shape stood. Still. Black against the dim light. Watching. I froze. The figure made no sound. No movement, not a hint. Yet it radiated menace. I stumbled backward, heart hammering. I shouldn't. I whispered. The figure was gone when I dared to look again, but the sense of being followed did not fade. Every floor, every corridor, every closed door seemed alive. I heard the softest scraping again, like nails across tile, moving just out of sight. I ducked into a store, shutting the door behind me. The interior smelled faintly of mildew and old electronics. The mannequins inside, posed like frozen shoppers, seemed to lean slightly toward me. My flashlight beam trembled. One mannequin's eyes. I could have sworn they glimmered, small black points reflecting light. A voice, sharp and broken, echoed from somewhere deep in the store. "Rules. You must follow the rules." I spun around. Who? Nothing. Just the mannequins, still and silent, yet somehow watching. I decided to move again. I needed to finish, to leave, to obey. I pushed the cleaning cart toward the stairwell. The upper floor beckoned, but I resisted. One rule remained clear: stay downstairs. And yet, the mall seemed intent on pulling me up. A faint draft drew me toward the stairs. A low hum of voices, or was it static, rose from above. It sounded like the whispers of people long gone, warning me, calling me, or taunting me. I forced myself to focus on my task. Vacuuming the food court, wiping tables, pushing chairs. But anomalies increased. Objects moved when I looked away. A chair slid a few inches. A display fell over. A mop bucket spun slowly in place. By the time I reached the cleaning closet, I realized I hadn't felt the floor under my feet in minutes. My mind had tracked every sound, every flicker, every shadow, but the mall kept breaking my rhythm. My reflection in the closet mirror showed me pale, eyes wide, hair disheveled. And behind me, for a fraction of a second, a shadow that didn't belong. I whirled. Empty hallway. Then came a soft giggle. Childlike, high-pitched, echoing from above. My throat tightened. My pulse raced. This mall, its lights, its mannequins, its empty stores, wasn't just empty. It was alive. Watching. Waiting. Feeding on attention. Curiosity. Fear. I fled down a corridor. Flashlight beams swinging wildly. The floor beneath my boots seemed to pulse. Tiles stretching, shadows thickening. Doors slammed on their own. An elevator groaned open, revealing nothing but darkness inside. And yet, I felt its presence. Something inside, something patient, something old. I stumbled into the main atrium again. The escalators were moving now, silently, up and down in opposite directions. I could have sworn I saw figures on the upper floor, standing in impossible positions, mannequins mingling with shadows, watching. A small, broken voice whispered from the darkness. "You shouldn't be here. You weren't supposed to see this." I froze, gripping the mop handle like a lifeline. My breath was ragged. My pulse felt audible in my ears. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was exhaustion, maybe hallucination. But something in the air, the smell, the weight, the oppressive presence, none of it was imagined. I remembered the rules, all of them, suddenly, with terrifying clarity. Don't go upstairs after 11. Don't touch the mannequins. Don't question anything. Every instinct screamed that I had already broken one. That the shadow I had glimpsed, the subtle movements, the whispers, they were proof. I had crossed some invisible line. And then I heard the sound I had feared. Dragging. Heavy, deliberate. Moving toward me from the upper floor. Not footsteps. Something larger. Something patient. Something that knew me. I ducked behind a cart, shivering. My flashlight flickered. When it steadied, the escalator was still. But at the top, the shadow returned. Taller, wider, blacker than before. Impossibly still, impossibly silent. I swallowed hard. The rules weren't just instructions. They were survival. I had ignored them. And now, the mall was responding. Something was coming. I didn't know how long I had been running. The hallways seemed endless. The fluorescent lights flickering faster than my eyes could follow. Every turn I took brought me back to the same atrium, the same escalators that now moved like serpents, up and down, defying logic. The air was thick, choking, carrying a smell I couldn't place. Metallic, old, faintly burnt. I pressed my back against a column, gasping. My flashlight quivered in my hand, swinging wildly, catching glimpses of shadows that weren't mine. And then I saw it. At the top of the escalator, the shadow had solidified. Not just darkness, but shape. Tall, hulking, faceless. Its presence warped the light, bending the edges of the hall like it was a ripple in reality. I stumbled backward. No, I whispered. The shadow moved. Not quickly, not with the hurried steps of a human, but with an inevitability that made my chest tighten. It glided downward, impossible, silent, swallowing the space between us. I bolted toward the stairwell. The rules, the manager's warnings, everything, they weren't suggestions. They were life or death. My hands trembled as I tried the door. Locked. I pounded on it. Let me out. My voice cracked, echoing in the cavernous emptiness. A whisper floated from above, soft and deliberate. You broke the rules. I turned, heart hammering. The shadow was closer now. The escalator hummed unnaturally, stretching impossibly upward, its steps extending into a darkness I couldn't see the end of. Figures appeared along the sides. Mannequins? Shadows. Both. They moved in impossible angles, twisting toward me without bending, limbs stretching beyond human proportions. I stumbled backward into a store. The electronics flickered with static. TVs, monitors, even the old arcade screens all flashed the same image. Me walking the halls alone, yet another figure followed my reflection. Always behind me. Always watching. A voice, sharper now, closer, cracked the air. You can't leave. You never could. I screamed. Who are you? What do you want? No answer. Only the mall shifting. The walls bent slightly, the ceiling lowered, the tiles beneath my feet stretching like rubber. Every door I approached led me back to the same atrium. The rules. I had already broken the first one. I remembered the other warnings. Don't touch the mannequins. I spun around, flashlight darting across the figures frozen mid-step. One mannequin's arm jerked toward me. Then another's head tilted, just slightly, almost a nod. They weren't just watching, they were part of it. They were feeding the presence, warning it of my fear. I ran. The escalator hummed, moving now with purpose, ascending toward me. At the top, the shadow stretched impossibly tall, and I saw now, it was more than a shape. Limbs twisted, faces flickered across it for a heartbeat, screaming silently, eyes wide. And then one turned to me, tilting its faceless head, and I felt the weight of 1,000 invisible gazes pressing down. I fell to my knees. The flashlight skittered across the floor. I tried to crawl backward toward somewhere, anywhere. But the mall had changed. Hallways looped, stairs led to empty walls, doors opened onto stairwells I hadn't seen before, always leading upward toward the shadow. I heard voices. Many of them, faint, overlapping, impossible. Some whispered warnings. "It's coming. The rules. Don't look." Others screamed in despair. "No. Get out. Help me." A mannequin shuddered violently, then lunged. I scrambled backward, heart hammering. Its eyes, black gleaming pits, followed me as it twisted unnaturally. Every mannequin in the hall began to move, stepping silently but deliberately, surrounding me. The shadow glided forward, slow, patient, and I realized with horror, the mall itself was alive. Feeding. Waiting. Judging. I screamed again, trying to scramble up the escalator in the opposite direction. The steps stretched, warped, moving like a living spine beneath my feet. The handrails pulsed, vibrating with energy I could feel in my bones. My breath came in ragged gasps, and then a voice, familiar and distant, floated down from above. "Follow the rules." I froze. My mind snapped into clarity. The rules weren't arbitrary. They weren't warnings. They were containment. Boundaries to hold the entity, the presence, whatever this mall had become. Breaking one had released it, and now it was here, and I couldn't run. I turned to face it. The shadow had descended further. Faces flickered across it, some screaming silently, some twisted in agony, others blank, featureless. I could feel their despair pressing against my mind, trying to pull me into the darkness. I'm sorry," I shouted. "I didn't know." A whisper curled around my ears, soft, lethal. "Ignorance is a choice." I felt myself lifted, almost off the ground, as if invisible hands pulled me toward the escalator. The mannequins closed in, forming a wall, each figure moving unnaturally fast, eyes locking on mine. I struggled, clawed, kicked, but the mall's grip was absolute. The shadow reached out. I couldn't see hands, only a distortion of space, bending the world around it. I felt my body being compressed, twisted, a cold emptiness crawling under my skin. My reflection shattered in the glass of a display. My face multiplied, elongated, distorted, and stared back at me with wide, silent eyes. I screamed again. A sudden sharp voice cut through the chaos, human, broken. "Stop! Don't let it take you." I spun. A figure emerged from the shadowed hallway, a night shift security guard I vaguely remembered from orientation. His flashlight cut through the dark like a blade. He held a keycard in his hand. "The rules, obey the rules," he shouted. "You have to reset it." He gestured to a panel behind the information desk. A keypad, wires dangling, glowing faintly. "Punch in the sequence," he yelled. "Don't hesitate. Don't look away." I stumbled toward it, shadow looming. My fingers trembled as I entered the sequence. The mall trembled with me. Escalators bent, walls rippled, mannequins froze mid-step. The shadow screamed, an impossible silent scream that vibrated through my bones. I finished the code. A jolt of light flashed. The mall lurched violently. The shadow shrieked, bodies and faces within it contorting, stretching, then evaporating like smoke. Mannequins collapsed into static positions. The escalators hummed normally. Silence fell abruptly, heavy and suffocating. I fell to my knees, shaking, lungs burning. My reflection in a display was finally normal again, or as normal as it could be. But something lingered in the corners of my vision. A dark flicker. A shadow too large to be mine. The guard knelt beside me. "You survived. But it's still here. Always watching." I nodded mutely, tears running down my face. The mall was quiet now, but I knew better. I had survived the climax, but the presence had not disappeared. It had merely retreated. For now. I rose, shaking, flashlight in hand. Every corridor seemed empty, yet I felt every step watched. Every reflection held a whisper, every mannequin a silent eye. I understood now. The mall was patient, eternal. Rules kept it contained. Break them and it would rise again. I left the escalator area, moving cautiously toward the exit. The shadow did not follow, not yet, but the air remained heavy, oppressive. I couldn't shake the sense that I had been marked, observed, chosen. The mall had won, in a sense. I had survived physically, but mentally, I wasn't the same. Every echo, every flicker of light, every distant hum would haunt me forever. And I knew, without doubt, that the rules would never end. The mall was silent. Or at least it seemed silent. My footsteps echoed softly as I made my way toward the exit, the janitorial cart abandoned somewhere near the escalator. The fluorescent lights hummed evenly now, the walls straight and the floors solid under my boots. Everything appeared normal, or as normal as a mall at night could be. I forced myself to breathe. My chest ached, my legs shook, and my hands still trembled from the weight of what had happened. I had survived. Somehow. The shadow, the mannequins, the warped corridors, they were gone, contained again by the rules I had followed at the last moment. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that it hadn't really left. That somewhere in the corners of the hallways I couldn't see, it was waiting. Patient. Watching. I stepped into the atrium one last time. The escalators were still. The arcade machines blinked in idle loops. Mannequins remained frozen in their poses. Artificial smiles stretched across blank faces. I could have sworn one of them turned its head as I passed. But I dared not look again. The exit doors were just ahead. Sunlight from the parking lot barely reached the interior, casting long, sharp shadows across the polished tiles. My legs carried me forward automatically, but my mind refused to rest. Every sound, the faint hum of a ventilation shaft, the soft squeak of my boots, even the whisper of the wind outside, felt amplified, deliberate. I reached the doors and hesitated. Keys in hand, I unlocked them and pushed against the heavy glass. Outside, the night had receded. The lot was empty, cars abandoned in rows, their paint dull under the weak morning light. The air smelled fresh, ordinary, but my body felt tight, tense. I stepped outside, letting the doors swing shut behind me. The mall loomed in the distance, quiet, unassuming, its glass facade reflecting the pale morning sky. From this distance it seemed harmless, a place of commerce, of bright lights and weekend crowds. But I knew better. I walked to my car, hands still trembling, and sat inside. The engine roared to life, but I barely noticed. My reflection in the rearview mirror caught my eyes. Wide, dark-rimmed, haunted. The weight of the night pressed against my chest. I was alive, yes, but changed. Hollowed. Marked. The phone in my pocket buzzed. I almost didn't answer. When I finally did, it was a text from the manager. Good work. Rules were followed. You are safe for now. I stared at the screen, mind racing. Safe for now. I whispered aloud. The phrase hung in the air like smoke. The mall's threat hadn't vanished. It had receded, yes, but it was patient, eternal. It remembered. It would always remember. I drove away slowly, the lot behind me growing smaller. But in my mind, the halls stretched endlessly. The escalators moved on somewhere to nowhere. Shadows waited. Mannequins watched. And I could hear faint whispers even behind the glass of my car. Don't forget. Days passed. Weeks. I returned to my normal life, went back to work, saw friends, slept, but nothing felt real. Every quiet place reminded me of the mall. Empty streets, silent rooms, mirrors in my apartment reflecting too much. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the shadow's faceless head, the impossibly tall figure, the figures moving in the peripheral edges of vision. I could feel them, always waiting. I tried to tell myself it was over. A nightmare made real by fatigue. But one night, the whispers returned. Faint, distant, carried on the wind through my open window. The rules, broken. I bolted upright in bed. My apartment was empty, normal. But something had changed. Something followed me home. A subtle presence in the corner of my vision, shifting just out of focus. I tried to convince myself. I had obeyed, I had survived. But the mall had left a part of itself behind. The next day, I drove past the mall. Sunlight reflected off the glass doors. Shoppers walked past unaware. Children laughed. The world moved on. But I noticed something unusual, something subtle that froze me in the passenger seat. A mannequin in the front display, its head tilted slightly, not facing forward, eyes watching. I blinked. It returned to its original position. My heart thundered in my chest. I wanted to believe it was coincidence. I wanted to believe I had imagined it. But deep down I knew better. The mall never forgets. Even now, I can hear the faintest whisper when I'm alone. I see movement in reflections that shouldn't exist. Every mirror, every glossy surface, every window, an eye. A watcher. Waiting. And I know one day the rules may falter again. One day my curiosity, my carelessness, my fear may give it a reason to return. I try to avoid the mall. I avoid thinking about it. But the memory lingers, like a scar on my mind. I hear the hum of the fluorescent lights in every empty hallway I enter. I see shadows stretch just a little too far. And I feel the weight of those rules pressing down on me, even when I am miles away. Because I survived. But I am not free. The mall waits. Always. And I know, without doubt, that it will come for me again if I ever forget. I glanced at my reflection in the rearview mirror that night. The streetlight flickered outside. For a heartbeat, I saw the shadow behind me, impossibly tall, faceless. Then it was gone. But the feeling remained. And that is worse than any scream.